So Sharon, Vermont is where I started my mission, and it's completely different from any place I have ever lived or been to before. It is the quintessential small town USA, but to the extreme. There's literally, in the city of Sharon, it's not even a city, it's a township. There is 2 gas stations. Everyone knows everyone by their first name. They don't like outsiders, and they'll call you a flatlander if they find out you're not from Vermont. Which for me, being born in Denver, I'm like, what do you mean a flatlander? I was born in the land of the Rockies. I mean, I live at a higher elevation than your tallest mountain. They just look at me like, you're a flatlander. But it's amazing because when the people in Vermont open up, they're some of the nicest people you've ever met. But Sharon, Vermont is old. All of Vermont is extremely old. That was the thing that probably struck me the most when I was going through some of these towns, because we tracked a lot. We'd see houses and there'd be a plaque. House was built in, 1699. And you're like, 1699? Or some guy invites us in. He's like, it's cold outside. Come in and warm up. We're like, thank you. He starts telling us the story of his house. He's like, this used to be the common house for the town, where when someone lost their job, someone was homeless, or someone had arrived in town, they didn't have anywhere to go, the town had actually built a home for them to go live in. And it had a farm that they would then work. And they would save the money from doing that, and then they'd buy their own house. And then the next person could come in. And so it was amazing because they talked about how there was very little poverty in the sense of no one having a home because they had that common house. But this guy who was living in the common house was showing us it, and he goes, yeah, this was built in 1750. And we're like, 1750? Like 2 decades before this Revolutionary War? And he's like, mm-hmm. And it was amazing to see just the history of our country and to realize how young everything really is. And just, I don't know, it's just amazing in Vermont because it really put it in perspective. Because in Utah, everything is new, relatively speaking. I mean, you go up to Salt Lake and they're like, oh yeah, this was built in 1880. And you're like, wow, that's old. You go to Vermont and when you start seeing the number 1600 on things, you're just like, 16? Like, are you serious? Like before George Washington was even born? Like people were in America back then? No, but in reality, it was really cool. And I mean, the roads, dirt roads everywhere. I mean, it felt like you were stepping back in time sometimes as you would be walking along a dirt road and it was covered in trees and leaves. And like, I half expected to see some horse and buggy drive by and be like, I think I'm in the Restoration movie right now. But it was really cool. Sharon is interesting because there's no real industry in the area. They have a couple schools. They have the Vermont Law School and the Vermont Technical College within that county. And so if you don't work there, usually the people are commuting to either up to the capital, Montpelier, or over into the border towns in between Vermont, New Hampshire, and White Junction. And so a lot of the people work extremely long hours and then they had to commute. And so when you knock on their door at 7 o'clock and there's like, I just pulled an 8-hour day and a 4-hour commute. I don't want to talk with anyone right now. But it's really cool because, like you said about the birthplace memorial, and I learned so much about it when I was up there. I always thought, Joseph Smith was born in Sharon, Vermont, and I figured his home would be like nestled right down near the heart of the city. It's up in the middle of nowhere. You go up a hill called Derry Hill, and you go up, I think it's like a couple miles, and you get up to the top of this hill, and there is the obelisk that commemorates where he was born. And then they tell you that the house was actually split down the middle with the town line. In one end of the town, it was Sharon, Vermont, and the other end of the house, it was South Royalton, Vermont. And I'm like, I did not know that. And they're like, the huge debate for the longest time was which end of the house he was born on. And, Lucy Smith said that he was born on the Sharon side. And for a long time, people argued that, but then they realized the Sharon side of the house was the side of the house that had the hearthstone, where they would have had the fireplace. And Joseph Smith was born in the middle of winter. And so if you were going to have a baby born, you're probably going to be closer to the fire than on the other end of the house where it's cold. And so, but it was really cool just to see the history and things like that, and to learn the history of the church and they have in that area, especially in relation to getting the memorial built and then established up there. Like, there's so many miracles. And like one instance, they're towing this, multi-thousand pound obelisk up this hillside, and they would approach a marsh, and there's a cart it's stuck in the marsh, and like, we can't really go forward. There's a hay cart that's stuck in the marsh, and we can't even get the donkeys out. And so they're like, well, we've hit the end of the road. We did the best we can. We'll have to wait until something happens. We won't be able to make it on time. And Junius Wells, the guy who's in charge of it, was like, no, I was told by the prophet we needed to have this ready for the dedication. And they're like, then what are you going to do? And he goes, well, when there's nothing to do, there's only one thing to do, and that's pray. And so that night, he asked everyone who believed in God on the team to pray and ask God for a miracle. And it went and dropped 40 degrees that night. An entire marsh was frozen solid, to the point where they were able to just roll right over the marsh with the obelisk. And everyone's like, what? Especially because the very next day it got back up into the 40s. And everything started becoming a marsh, and it was awful again. Like, how did that work? And he's in there, he goes, when you're doing the Lord's work, he'll provide a way for it to happen. So stories like that, and you start hearing those when you're a brand new missionary, it really inspires you, because you're like, okay, if God can freeze a marsh to get a piece of stone up a hill, I think he's going to help me to talk to this person that I don't know who they are, but I'm walking up to them right now. Hey, how you doing? And it's really kind of encouraging for you to know that it's real. And so